Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for another CTC software webinar. Today we're going to be talking about Earthwork Processor and just really an overview, as it says, comprehensive introduction, show you how it works and some of the requirements. My name is Tony Crick. I'm the Civil Product Manager here at CTC Software. And as always, this video or this webinar will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. So you can view it later, share it with others. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for checking us out. And if you're here live, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your attendance. And as we go along here, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question panel and we will get to those if we can during the broadcast. Otherwise, we will certainly leave some room afterwards. So with that, let's get started. Okay, Earthwork Processor. Some of the things it will do for you, it will help streamline your volume estimates by generating calculations from earthwork sets that you creative when you have existing and proposed surfaces, along with polylines, feature lines, and or survey figures to represent varying subgrade depth regions across the site. Earthwork Processor will then generate dynamic subgrade surfaces and can account for topsoil stripping and provide cuts and fills per subgrade region. And when designs change, depths change, all we need to do is make an adjustment in Earthwork Processor and rerun it. And with those, we can export our results to an Excel. We can put those into our drawing as an AutoCAD table, and we can also label the region areas. So it's part of the CTC CIM project suite of tools, and it is intended for the everyday Civil 3D user creating design and production drawings. It will work in the last 4 versions of Civil 3D, currently back to 2021. So today we're going to talk about some of the setup that's involved, the usage for it, and the best practices to help us optimize our Earthwork processors. And then we're going to explore how those processes can make for efficient calculations, which will then increase the proficiency of your earthwork analysis. So Earthwork Processor, why use that? Well, it's easier than the native tools, so it's a one-step process basically. And we can have variable subgrade depth calculations. It's easy setup when things change, or easy updates when things change. And we can also create our labels and tables simultaneously within the drawing and externally. And it will calculate our subgrades by region. We'll show you that in the demo, which I mentioned before. We use polylines, feature lines, survey figures to do those calculations in. We can include topsoil stripping if we want to, and it will also create Civil 3D surfaces, which are not proprietary. It goes right into your tool space. So we define sets for earthwork volumes. We'll get to that in the demo. And then we select from proposed and existing surfaces. We select our regions and provide subgrade depths. And then it creates the dynamic Civil 3D surfaces from there. And we can save those templates to be used in other projects. So with that, let's jump into the drawing and show you what we're talking about. So here we have a small site to use for our demo here. And so we talked about some of the things we need and the requirements that are needed. So we said we need a proposed surface and an existing surface, which we have here. And then we need our regions. I'll show you those that we talked about to define where we want to generate our volumes from. And also it will take no negative values. We're saying that everything is a subcut or a subgrade, so we're going below the surface anyway. And the value that we enter will be below the surface. And then the other thing is the regions cannot overlap or touch, and they must be closed. So in this drawing, as we have, you see we have this area for this drive, calling this a heavy pavement area, and the parking area more of a light pavement type of area. So if you set things up and you do things consistently, some of the best practices are to maybe have a layer filter such as this, or put all of your earthwork stuff on one layer. So if you're defining the boundaries outside of what your heavy pavement area would be, and you've already done that with a polyline or whatever, and you did that here as well for the light pavement, you might want to use the offset region, or offset earthwork regions tool that we have included here. So this will simply pull up this dialog box right here. All the rest of this is the same. I'll show you that in a second here. And then we set our offset, and it can be as far out as 8 places, I believe. Let's try that. Yeah, so we can go all the way out to whatever AutoCAD Civil 3D allows. So this is by default set to 0.02. I mean, it can be anything. It's not going to affect your volumes much if you wanted to offset that by something like that, like 0.15, let's just say. So then we select what we want to. So if I want to do an offset, I can come in here and I can pick these individually. I'll do this, but then I'm going to delete it just to show you. So I'll pick this one right here, which happens to be our turf area. You can do these globally as well. So if I wanted to do it globally, I could do it by layer right here. And I could add the wildcard to it. As we saw in the layer manager, they're all on the same layer. So if I regen this, so now we know we have 5 areas that are going to come off of it. So let me delete that out of there, and I'll just select the 1 again, just to show you how we offset this. So it can be inwards or outwards, left or right, and that depends, the left or right depends on the direction that you drew that polyline or whatever, and we can delete the existing entity too. So if we had all of these were bunched in the same place, let's just say I could delete that and you would get something that looked like this where everything is good to go. So I'm just going to say inward on this one, and I'll just say okay. And it's going to put it on the same layer right here. It shows you it pulled it from that layer, so it's going to put it on that layer. Oops, I had that set to delete and I didn't want to do that. So let me do it again. But this time I'll deselect the delete and reselect my line, because it won't remember that after you undo. So reselect it, and I can say okay, and there, put it in there. And if we look at this for distance, we see that it is in fact 0.2. I guess I left it since I undid 0.2 over, and if I take a look at this, the elevation is 0.1754, and this elevation is also 1.754. So it just duplicates, just like running an offset command, or if it was feature line, stepped offset, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to delete that out of there. Oops, let me show you one more thing just so we can verify. I can look up here my manage or my inquiry analyze tool, and I can make sure that they're not crossing. So this is a good practice to do. If you're doing it compare to make sure that they're not crossing. Here we see our 0.2 different right there. So that's just a good way to check things. If you see an error, if they are touching or crossing, you will get an error and it won't let you run those areas. So you can go back and you can just check, make sure that they're not touching by using that inquiry tool right there. Kind of a handy little thing to do to make sure things aren't touching. So with that, then we go back to Earthwork Processor to start setting things up. So I'm going to hit the Calculate Earthworks button right there. And it's going to bring up my Earthwork Processor main window. So we'll go through this a little bit. For those of you that haven't used the tool before, are new to it, some of the settings here. This little pull down will get us basically everything that's over here. The help will take us to the user manual. The video guide will take us to our website and our Earthwork Processor videos, which this will be a part of shortly. And then our support, if you have any questions or issues with it, click this. It'll take you right to our website where you can enter your question or issue or problem with it. And then this just simply tells us about what we're at, what version and such right here. So some of the other things involved here are our options button. So within our options button, we have this little click to remember the size and position of the window. And then where do we want our Earthwork sets to be defaulted to? And by that we mean when you save them and or want to open them from over here. Then we can add our default values to our cut. I'm going to make this 0. Oops, just 1, I mean. And then I shouldn't have hit enter. You have to click out of it to make it go. So 1, I'm going to set that at 1, but if you have a cut or fill factor that you always use for 30% or whatever you use, you can set that right here. And then we can set, if we're using a default stripping depth, right here, we can give it that. If it's a 1/2 foot or 8 inches, whatever you have to do. And then this toggle right here, if we want to have it display in a total, this total row down here, I turn that off and say okay, it goes away. You will still get the regional totals up there, but by clicking this, you can see the whole volume totals down there. And then our surface creation is right here. So we can click to create a surface folders within or for each Earthwork set. So that just helps right away manage your surfaces in your tool space over there. Then the name match default, some other things we can do here, set our break lines. And then over here is our labels and reports. Some important things to know about this are how we order these. So we can move these around how we want to. So if we want a cut factor, fill factor, cut, fill, our net, our cut fill, our raw cut fill, and then if we included stripping and area. I'm going to actually move that area up to right there. And then two, with this right here, this tells us what goes in there. So this is what I have chosen. We can choose to add more things to this if we want to. All of these options are there to include. If I want to include the layer name for it, I could add that. It will go to the bottom of the, or it should have gone to the bottom of the list. I guess it didn't. There it is right there. And I don't want that, so I'm just showing you. So I'm going to remove that. Say OK. And then one other thing I want to show you. If you want to change what these headers are up here, I wanted to just call that my region, I don't know, region areas, or actually let's call it this. How about set names? So if I call it my set names name, I can do that. That should change over there. When we get there, we can do the same things down here. Here's what our table style is going to look like. I have two of these in here. Apparently, I'll turn that one on. And then how do we want that to be? Include headers. Everything we want to set right there. Again, the layer, we want it to go on. Lots of different settings in here for however you want those to work. And two, I should go back to, if you're going to export that table, then that will come, or that will go here as well in this Earthwork set defaults. So I'm going to say OK here to save those options. Then over here, here's how we create our sites, or sets, I mean. Why didn't that change? Oh, that's for my tables. Okay, not for this header. So that was for my tables. I set that in AutoCAD. So if I hit the plus right here, this is how we start to build a new set. So then here I can give it a name. For this one, I'm just going to call it demo right now. And then we have the selection right here, whatever surfaces are in here. And as we create them and they populate in our tool space, they will become available over here. So if, for instance, you wanted to use a stripping surface for your existing ground instead, if you said I'm going to strip the whole site, let's just say a half a foot, then you could create a surface from the, that's just stripped down a half a foot for the entire site if you had a boundary around the entire site, and then use that for your existing surface instead. So that way we kind of avoid the stripping per region. Kind of up to you how you want to do that. I've seen it done both ways out there, where it's included in the region areas, or a lot of people like to use that as my existing surface that they just took everything off. And the calculations then become more solid versus doing the net and the raw cut fill, as we call it. So if I pick that, finished ground and existing ground, then I go to my subgrade regions. So this is the same selection box that we had with our offset. It works the exact same way. So if I go ahead and I do this, and I hit my refresh button, so there's 5 areas it's going to include with that. So I'm going to do that first, just to show you what that looks like and how we get at that. And I'm going to show you another advantage to selecting those individually. So if I say OK right here, so it's pulling in the layer names for the regions it's going to include. So where are those regions? So to double check things, we can see this light pavement we talked about inside this magenta hatch area is right there. Our building footprint is going to be right there. and our turf, and so on. 2 turf areas, one at 0, one at the 0.175. That must be the interior one. This one you can see has no elevation. So we could set this to an elevation right here. And so let's see where that one is. I'll show you what happens when that happens. So we see that's this outer area here. So this outer area is that turf with no elevation. But let's say I wanted to cut that a foot or a half a foot. Let's just make it a half a foot. I do that. Well, first let me not do that. Put that back. And I'm just going to close this here to show you where these are coming from, so we don't get confusion on that. So this one right here is my polyline, and the elevation is 0 for that. So you see it's 0 right now. When I pull Earthwork Processor back up, and I give that region an elevation with Earthwork Processor, and bring that back over here. So if I click this and I say it's 0.5, as we talked about, and I say enter, and I close, I don't think I need to run this before it takes that elevation. I think it should have changed it right there. It did not. So I have to run it first. So let me first zoom out here so we can see the whole thing. And I'm going to go ahead and run it and just show you how it works for using Civil 3D, all the same Civil 3D stuff. Seems to keep opening in my other window, even though I told it here. So if I go ahead and run this, it will change this volume. So it didn't hold because I didn't run it. So I'll change it to 0.5. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it. So if you do a bunch of them at once, you can do run all. If you got everything set up, you're good to go. You can set these up ahead of time. You can do a run all, or you can run these individually. I'm going to go ahead and run this individually to show you. Here we get all of our volume calculations. So we see our cut volume and our net volume are the same in this case because I didn't apply a stripping. But if I apply, well, I'm not going to do that because I did this at a half a foot. So that's a bad example. But we'll come back, we'll do that in a second. So if I close that here, what I really just wanted to show you was that what it does is it immediately populates with a folder as we told it in our options. And we get our volume surface, so we get our actual surface for the whole, for our subgrades, for everything. So we have those set to a no display by default. I can turn on, let's do that one. I can turn it back on, and we see that this site has been created here with our volumes. We need some cleanup with our surface apparently. Oh, it's because of how these things go together. But that's what it does over here. So I'm actually going to leave that surface on. So the next thing I want to, let's go look at that line. So as we see here now, that elevation got changed to 0.5. So that's where the volume is coming from right there. So it's changed it to 0.5, so 1.5 below the actual surface with our calculations. So if we want to do this a different way, an advantage to picking these individually, as we saw, I'm going to first go ahead and delete these out of here, get those out, and it works this easy. So I hit plus right here, and I can start grabbing my line, my region areas. So I've got one there. I got one there. Should have turned off that hatching so we can get at it better. I got one there. Grab it. And I got that one. So there, I've got these 3 areas now. If I say okay, I have these. So the advantage of picking these one at a time is if I grab just one of those, I can delete it out of there. Whereas if I do it by layer globally, I don't have the same control in here. So whatever your workflow might be, however you might want to do that, you can do that right there. Another way we can weed through some of these areas is by using our exclude. And I'll show you that again in a second when we get to our templates. We'll go through some of these tools over here. So this button right here, what this does is this will delete. If I hit this, this will delete the set, but it will leave the surface. This will delete everything. So I'm going to click that, and it's asking me right here, are you sure you want to do this? It's going to delete everything. Do you want to save? Maybe you want to save that set right there. In this case, I'm going to say delete. And now it's gone from here, and it will also be gone from our earthwork or from our tool space over here. So you see it's now gone. So it's no longer accessible there. So all the data gets wiped out of there. So a good way to kind of clean things up right there. Let me open this back up. Bring it back over. Okay. So yeah, so we talked about this. That's how we add it, delete everything, reorder them here. And then here's if we want to copy one. We'll get to that in a second. Save it if we wanted to save. This opens any that we already have saved. You might put those through your options box here. You might put those in a central location somewhere on your network where other folks can get at them. Maybe a manager did that for you, whatever. And then this right here creates our AutoCAD table, and this exports it to an Excel. So I made one ahead of time here for our overall and the building itself too. So if I take out and open that one right there, so we have everything in here just like we did with the layer filters. Being that everything is the same, we always use this ERWK. You do it however you want, vols, whatever. But we see here that they're all there. So if we didn't want one or a couple of these in here, like this building, maybe we don't want that. In this case, and maybe we don't want the turfs either. I can go ahead and I can just type a wildcard again, just like AutoCAD does. I can use my comma, and I can exclude the turf as well. If I do a refresh here, now it's down to 3 areas. Which, does that make sense? Well, we'll see. Say okay. So it didn't take the building. See if this does it. Okay. Well, we'll do this another way. So I'll just go ahead and type it all in there. Do a refresh. All right, why isn't that going away? Oh, I got a dash on there. User error. There we go. So now you see that that's gone there. So now I can just calculate these turf areas. So if I added the stripping right here for that, and we want this, the subgrade depth to 2, we can change these as we see fit. So the heavy pavement, our subgrade depth is 2. The light pavement, maybe that's only 1.5. I'm going to change that right here. We already saw how that works. I'm going to go ahead and do that there. And I had preset those in my template. This is why we're getting our cut factor, that even though we set our options to 0, it's already built into that template that we use to run it. So we have our overall area in square feet. We have our cubic yards. These units can all be set as well. And this is what we're going to get. So our net calculation in this case is going to be different because that won't be part of our needed fill. So as I run this, you'll see that our cut fill and our net will be different. Oh, why didn't that work? Let me try this again. Existing 2, okay. Let me run it again. Don't know why my numbers aren't coming up right. So let me try that again. Without the template. Actually, let's do it this way. Let me change these. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to rerun this. Okay, star. Refresh it. Say okay. And we'll get those out of there again. Let me run it first. I'm not sure why that we're getting zeros there. The finish is not coming through. I'm sure it's a user error on my part for some reason. But that's how that works right there. I'm going to delete that one. Delete that one out of there. So now I can break these up as well. I can make a new one. Actually, let me try bringing that footprint to see if that's part of it. I set the cut fill to 0. That's why. Thank you. Thank you, smart viewer out there. You're right. You're right. You're right. There we go. So now I can run it again. There we go. There's our numbers. So there's where you're seeing the different numbers. So the cut fill will change depending on the stripping is what I want to show you here. So it's not a cut if it's coming off of the stripping. If the stripping is not there, what we're doing is we're taking and we're subtracting our strip area from our raw cut fill and giving us our net right here. So that's how that works right there. So let me go ahead and clean that back up again. So I can make this work. Star footprint, and it's not case sensitive. I think we saw that. Just wanted to point that out. And we'll go star turf. Probably if I would have put BLDG star, that would have worked. Let's try that. You see how things work and don't work? Maybe this way, yeah, see that worked. That's my wild carding wasn't entered correctly. Funny, our viewers didn't catch that. So I say, okay, now it comes down to this, and now you notice it went out of date right away. So it knows that something about these have changed. So in this case, I have to rerun it. But I'm going to go ahead and do a run all on this one. Let's just verify that this looks right. That is clearly wrong. But we're getting the correct layer for it in there. So that should work, but this again is wrong. That should be my finish ground. That should be my existing ground. And I probably would want to save that back. So I'm going to do that actually right now to show you. And we got our 1.13 cut value is in there. I'm going to save over top of that, just to make sure that we don't get that mistake again. And I probably should have changed this to straight up 1 in there too. That's okay. So now we can do run all. So if you have a lot of areas, this will take a little bit of time, but it doesn't take that long to do. So now we get our totals again over here. We had no stripping involved with the building footprint. So I can close that. And we can look over here in our civil, our toolbar. And if we look at some of these, I'll just open this one up. And we can see how what's happening here. So all we're doing is we're pasting in and we're pushing it down 4 feet. It's really no more difficult than that. We can also see that in our tree over here. We see what the process was to do this, created this break line to define our area. So then this will work exactly like Civil 3D alone if you want to do any other edits or changing to that. So completely unaffected by that. So then if I want to see what any of those surfaces look like, I already put made a little profile here to see the surfaces and one here to see the surfaces. I can go ahead and I can just add these right into my profile view right here. So I want the site, let's do this one. Let's add this one. And let's add this one. And so I want these to look a little different. These styles are all coming right from whatever styles you have in your settings over there. I'm not sure what these look like. Let me try. Oh, here I do have a subgrade on a. Okay. Here I thought I had forgotten to make that, so let's do that. Whoops, that should be stripping. And then subgrade. Say OK. And if I just say OK out of here, I got that set to dynamically update. So here's what we're seeing right here. We're seeing a mirror from the ground up, and then it's finding our break line out here from the edge and calculating our volumes from there. Here's our strip surface all the way across. So let me see if I've missed anything here that I wanted to show you. We talked about changing our values. So I guess I've covered everything. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to answer or ask those, and we'll get to those. One more thing is this building. Did that come in? I didn't put that in. Let's look at that as well, because we went 4 feet down. So let's look at that. Just to show you what that looks like in your surface. So if I add my building footprint subgrade, and I'll also call that subgrade, say OK. And now we can see it comes out to where our other region ended on our heavy pavement out there. Then it picks up for our building footprint. nice way to calculate some footing grading for a footprint like that. Okay, so now that's all I had to show you. So again, it's part of a CTC CIM project suite. We're currently at 25.1. We also have our manager suite also at 25.1, both of which are due to be updated very, very soon. And if you have it and you have any questions on it, you can ask your reseller first, or if you want to contact us, you can. If you don't have it, you can also contact your local reseller or contact us here at ctcsoftware.com. And as always, if you have any ideas for any of our tools, please contact us here, and we'd be glad to entertain your ideas. Our tools are built for you from suggestions by you out in the real world. So in conclusion, we use our grading regions for volume calculations. We can dynamically manage our civil 3D surfaces. We can adjust our variable subgrades either within the tool or straight up from your region line, whatever you choose to use it. And then we calculate our region and our total volumes for estimates. Then we can use our templates for multiple projects. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to those of you watching, and also to those of you that have viewed this on YouTube.